Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. State of Pennsylvania, their Supreme Court today struck down Governor Tom Wolf's mask mandate, which means, thanks to our Supreme Court, the schools across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, all 500 school districts, now up in the air whether you're going to wear masks or not. The local battles, let them begin. Let the local warring at your local school boards get even more fraught with anger and whiny people complaining about the beautiful smiles of my baby. Get ready for it. Because, well, thank you, Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, who has chucked it. There's no opinion in this case. Yes, they say there's going to be one. I can't wait to see the rationale. But the victors in this, which Republicans, Senate President pro tempore Jake Corman, he was one of the plaintiffs, a parent and one of the plaintiffs. He said the decision meant the power for parents and local leaders to make health and safety decisions in our schools is restored. Yeah, because the people we want making those decisions are the ones who barely got out of the school system to begin with. We want the kid who failed high school biology to be the next virologist and epidemiologist to make sure that a deadly disease, doesn't go all over the place. Now, the Wolf administration, extremely disappointed. Yeah, I would think because their job just got, infinitely more difficult. Because again, things are rising, and when things get bad, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the people in charge. And is Wolf going to be able to turn around and go, well, they didn't let me do what I needed to do? Yeah, but that's not going to matter because people are still going to be sick, and there still will be people dying. Now, this doesn't mean that masks are done. As I said, this means local school board meeting is going to get a whole lot more interesting because some schools, they're going to continue to mandate the masks. Like Philadelphia, for instance, they say they're going to continue regardless of the state mandate. And there are other school districts across the state that have said that. There are 500 here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A lot of them are consulting their lawyers, figuring out how much money they're going to spend. Again, this is another one of these moments where education dollars, finite resource. So here's the situation school boards are going to be in. Finite resource of education money. We got to pay teachers. We got to pay for books and classrooms and extracurriculars and all this stuff. Or do we spend that money litigating, keeping our students safe? Do we spend that money on lawyers in long, drawn-out court processes to, make our students less safe? Now, some current conservatives would say, but Rick, this was the goal all along, to bring it back to the local level. This was, was designed to get big government out of our life. It should all be local. And okay, if that's your argument, get ready for the fun and entertainment that's about to come. And especially if you're in a crazy area where you have a fairly sane school board going, we've got to make rational decisions to make sure that we don't end up having to shut down because things get completely out of control and end up costing us and our students much more down the road. Or do we just satisfy the loudest, most obnoxious people in our community? And understand, the loud and obnoxious people, they're the minority. The problem is people, the sane, rational people, they're not the ones showing up at the board meetings screaming and carrying on. Maybe they need to be. Maybe this is the future of school board meetings. Now, the lawsuit was brought and backed heavily by this Amistad Project. They are a big conservative litigation group. They're the ones who helped bring the 2020 election result challenges around. Lots of money in this. And understand, there's part of me that goes, it has nothing to do with the mask, has nothing to do with the safety of your children or mine. It has everything to do with going after Tom Wolf and going after Joe Biden. It has everything to do with, it's the other. It has everything to do with, let's get people angry and fired up and feed them the outrage candy. Because here's the thing, this is one of those weird things where the states are all over the place. You got Arizona, whose Supreme Court struck down their ban. You got Florida, who there's a ban on masks. You've got New Jersey, who said, no, mask mandate stays in place. In fact, the judge there, parents claimed that it was a First Amendment right. The judge there, a guy named Kevin McNulty, he wrote in an opinion that to be muffled is not to be gagged. So just because you can't hear me because the mask's on doesn't mean we've stopped you from speaking. I wish we could in a lot of cases, but not that. He dismissed it on an equal protection argument, saying it applied to everyone, all schools, all everything. And said it was a rational policy. It's rational for policymakers to go, you know what? Maybe we should do the only thing that we know that actually helps cut down on the spread of this thing. And that's simply a piece of cloth over your mouth to tap down the airborne particles that are going to make people sick. Now, I do find it interesting that the right, the conservative, the Republicans, my Congressman Scott Perry tweeted out another great victory for the Constitution, parents and local rule as Governor Wolf's unconstitutional school mask mandate has been tossed by the PA Supreme Court. #freedom. And I'm going, yay! We get to spread freely an aggressively opportunistic airborne contagion. Yay! We won. Not quite sure what we won, but we won. You saw in the comment section, victory! We showed them. Take that, libtard. It was quite sad in where we have gone. You got the guy who's running for governor on the Republican side, this Dave Wolf, saying that I commend the court, their decision to invalidate Wolf's unconstitutional mask mandate. He says when he takes office, he's going to work to reverse all remaining unconstitutional orders. Which means he's not going to do anything in a moment of crisis. Now, the reason I bring this up and understand, they won. They got what they wanted. They are now imposing upon the rest of us here in Pennsylvania and across the country. Some of this is happening. This could be coming into a neighborhood near you, so pay attention. What's going on here in Pennsylvania is the number of COVID cases are rising. School boards are going, if it gets to a certain point, we might have to shut down. There was just a story this morning. Philadelphia WPZI, or WPVI Channel 6, there in Philadelphia points out that there are in the country right now 65,000 patients across the country in the hospital because of COVID. That's up 20,000 over a month ago. Pennsylvania's hospitals getting close to crisis mode because we're filling up again. They quoted this Dr. Gerald Maloney. He's the chief medical officer at Geisinger Hospital System, one of the largest systems in Pennsylvania. He said the healthcare system in Pennsylvania is at the brink of collapse. They're running out of beds. They're running out of beds at their 9 hospitals across the state. In the central part of the state that didn't get really hit, the southeast got hit. Philadelphia got hit. The center of the state, not so much. Now they're saying, And he goes, look, we got people coming in who are having strokes or having heart attacks, car accidents. We can't get them out of the ambulances because there aren't places to put them in the emergency room. Now, I have a friend who had to go to the emergency room about a week and a half ago. He sat there for hours, had a heart condition, hours waiting to be seen. Hours. Because there was nowhere to go. Now, according to their action team, this Channel 6 action team, they've pointed out that, right now in Pennsylvania, there are 4,000 people, probably over 4,000 people in the hospital with COVID. They're expecting that number to rise. We're over 7,000 cases a day, and that is rising each and every day. Another hospital administrator points out that the number of ICU beds that are required and the ventilators that are required now up like 59%, he said. So more than half of the patients who are going into hospitals with COVID are on ventilators. And this is the part this is the kicker. This is the kicker. This is it. And this is where you keep coming back to. Keep coming back to the fact that the folks who are in the hospital, overwhelmingly, like they're saying 88%, the numbers I've seen, 90, 95%, 88% of the people in Pennsylvania hospitals right now on ventilators like this, unvaccinated. And you go, duh. And this was where you start going, I start seeing people go, well, you know, do we just not bring them in? Because what about the person who has a stroke? What about the person who has a heart attack? What about the person who's in the car accident? Should they have to suffer because stupid didn't get vaccinated? Because there was a way to keep them out of that hospital? Now you got this Dr. Maloney saying, look, you know, I fear we're going to have to bring back the refrigerated trucks in the parking lot to hold the dead because things are ticking up. And what's amazing to me, and I guess it shouldn't be, is that the anti-mask crowd is also the anti-vax crowd. So stupid on double barrel stupid. And who pays? Well, the rest of us. And this is where I'm starting to get to the point to where I have no sympathy left for stupid. I'm waiting for a Fred Phelps kind of group. And if anybody remembers who Fred Phelps was, the Westboro Baptist Church guy who would show up at the funerals of LGBT people who died from AIDS with all kind of hateful things. I'm waiting for someone like this to show up at funerals with big signs going, congratulations, where you're going, you don't have to wear a mask or get vaccinated. I hope it doesn't come to that, but you know, is that what it's going to take? Now look, the weird thing in all this is these conservatives think that they're fighting the fight. And for me, you know, when you're fighting against something like this, there's usually someone being harmed by it. You know, someone's harming you. There's something that's being taken. Because look, I love a good fight. I love being on the you know, the underdog side. I love taking on you know, the big powerful special interests. But it's got to be that you're righting a wrong. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing how anyone's harmed by being asked to wear a mask and be considerate of others. I'm just missing it. Completely gone. And what's happening, you know, right now, the right-wing outrage machine in full victim mode. Because by being asked to wear a mask, somehow you're now the victim. Never mind the person who, like my buddy's daughter, who we're not sure what's going on. They think it might be COVID. They think it might be long COVID, who's right now struggling for her life because somebody just wanted to see their baby's beautiful smile because the blood of Jesus was going to keep them safe. And I'm just all pure and the blood of Jesus going to keep me safe. And the reality is, no, not going to happen. Now, what's going to be kind of also interesting is the fight is going to move into the private sector. So get ready for more Karens and company to make the rest of our lives even more difficult, especially in the coming weeks as things start ticking up. Because now, with this is going to give license to say, I don't have to wear a mask anywhere. My kids don't have to wear one to school. I don't have to go to Walmart. I'm waiting for it. It's coming. Oddly enough, Chief Justice John Roberts has refused to block a mask mandate for air travel. Thank goodness for at least, you know, he's on the wrong side of most things. At least at this point, he's saying no. They've rejected an emergency request to block the federal mask mandate for air travel, which thank goodness. And they didn't ask for. He didn't respond, and there was no emergency relief or any of that stuff. The argument is, and this is what gets me. This guy is saying that this Florida resident saying that he and his 4-year-old son, who need medical treatment in Massachusetts, can't fly because neither he, the father, or the son can wear a mask for medical reasons. Now, we live in a time where you could easily, I'm seriously, if you really needed to get to Massachusetts for medical purposes, seriously, if it was really serious, you could find a way. For instance, I had one doctor friend of me say, well, in this case, why didn't they just put a mask on and have an air canister that would, give them oxygen if they really truly have a problem to meet the requirements to get where they need to go? Or why didn't they just drive? Which is why, again, this isn't about, they have a medical condition. This is about just being the fly in the ointment. And the number of people are going, well, I have this, I've been stranded in Florida, so I can't get out of Florida because I have to wear a mask. Well, you can drive. You don't have to fly. You don't have a constitutional right to flying. And this is where I think, and as I said, I think things are going to get really a lot more interesting. With decisions like this Supreme Court decision, it's going to fall back to, as I've been saying all along, it's going to fall back on capitalism. It's going to fall back on higher insurance premiums for the unvaccinated. It's going to fall back on do corporations, keep employees that are not willing to get vaccinated? How are they going to treat customers who are coming in? How are they going to deal with the things that are going to come up? How is that going to work? And that's the thing that I find interesting. I don't know. I don't know what the future days hold in all of this. What I am concerned about, I am concerned by the fact that there's nothing our government's going to be able to do. It's up to we, the people. And that's the scary part. Because the loudest, the craziest, the least educated, they're the ones who are driving this discussion. Instead of the people who say, look, we just got to get through this. Do the right thing. The things that we know work. It's all we know. Wear the mask, socially distance, stay out of large groups if you can. Live your life, but don't be a total moron. That's all I can come up with. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Is this the future? Are we going to have to suffer through? Because, I want to see my baby's beautiful smile. I got to see it. Stick around. Right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day the 1,000,000th Model T rolled off the Ford assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan, near Detroit. Henry Ford started Model T production 7 years earlier. For nearly 20 years, the Tin Lizzie served as the first affordable vehicle, opening up travel and leisure to a new middle class. Ford refashioned the packing house conveyor to develop the assembly line. Before production moved to the sprawling modern River Rouge complex, the Highland Park plant was considered the factory that changed the world. Ford's ambition to produce cars for the multitudes extended to his workers. As part of his campaign to beat back organizing drives by the industrial workers of the world, Ford instituted the $5 day at the Highland Park plant. For auto workers, buying a Model T even with the $5 day was not so easy. The $5 day actually amounted to $2.34 in wages and an additional $2.66 a day in profit sharing if Ford determined the worker was actually living right. Investigators from his sociological department visited workers in their homes. The routine intrusions into the personal lives of workers away from the job included determining spending and cleanliness habits, whether they drank or smoked, whether they were married or single, the state of the workers' marital relations, and family values. Workers who failed these home inspections were given 6 months to shape up or be fired. Ford ruled young single men, women, and blacks completely ineligible from the wage program. For a time, employee turnover plummeted and production increased. But wartime inflation and deteriorating working conditions all but killed the $5 day, which ended in 1921.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday on the program, we had Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh on the program talking about the things that the administration's doing to help alleviate some of our supply chain problems, especially at the port on the West Coast. And look, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. I disagreed with him on the truck driver issue. I think there are enough, and if there aren't enough, maybe they should be offering better wages and conditions. Just my thought. And he did agree with that part of it. But I think our problem is, one, we don't manufacture enough here in this country. This should be the wake-up call to, hey, let's start building things in America. Let's make Made in America the clarion call out of this pandemic. But here to share some thoughts on our supply chain issues. Are things getting better? And how do we make them better even still? I've asked Greg Regan to come talk with us. Greg is the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Their website, ttd.org. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So, like I said, yesterday we spoke with Marty Walsh about the supply chain issues. He says things are getting better, are they?
Yes, they are. Unfortunately, for the long-term prospects in our country, we can fix the number of ships that are being anchored off our shores right now. We can clear the number of containers that are being held in yards and that are sitting there for days or weeks at a time. That doesn't mean we'll solve the problem. We can make it more fluid right now. We can address the current crisis, but long-term, there are some structural issues that have been decades in the making that we need to address here. And it's starting with worker misclassification in the trucking industry. And on the rail side, this has been a planned out business strategy to reduce their overhead as much as possible. And it's created a completely inelastic system that is, as soon as we saw a surge, they collapsed. Yeah. We saw this coming.
No, and this was something this isn't new. This was something that was building up to, 2019 already. And look, I've been talking about the port issue for a long time, especially with the misclassification of drivers and all of the nonsense that's going on there. But it's also this idea of business that we have just-in-time inventory. This is the smart people saying, no, we don't need to have supplies built up. We don't need to have reserves. No, we can have a box of bolts shut down an entire factory because, we're waiting for the hour for something to get here. It's right. Kind of backwards and ridiculous, but it's the world that we've created.
It is. And, and you speak to a couple of things there. One is we've created this system that is so driven by quarterly profit returns. So it's, the hedge fund manager sort of business management. And our freight infrastructure system cannot be built that way. It needs to be built towards long-term sustainability because our economy really relies on it being, elastic, being flexible, and being resilient. And we, through a lot of the corporate decision-making that's happened, we've reduced all of that. It is not resilient. It is not flexible. And more so because we have pushed so much of our manufacturing overseas. You're hearing about a shortage of chassis. You're hearing about a shortage of rail cars or containers. We don't make those here anymore. We're entirely relying on somebody else to do it. So when we do have a shortage of chassis, where are we going to get them?
Yeah, wrap it up.
We're at the whim of somebody else in that situation, not ourselves.
And the other part of this, and we learned this when you were talking about masks and PPE. In a minute, I want to get your thoughts on what we're doing there. But, what we learned is, during the height of the moment, the countries that did produce those things, and not surprisingly, made themselves whole first and held on to reserves before they shared with anybody else, which, kind of common sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we see that, unfortunately, that short-term policy making that has been in place now for decades here in terms of it's cheaper. It's cheaper to get it overseas. It's cheaper to do things a certain way. It's cheaper to ship things on foreign flag vessels. But you know what? When there's an emergency and when there's a crisis and we don't have a U.S. merchant marine that's fully capable of providing the needed U.S. sea lift capacity, we don't have the manufacturing infrastructure here to be able to produce what we need. We are at the whim of everybody else, and it's not a long-term solution for our country.
Now, you testified this week in front of the Senate, right?
Yep.
About these very issues. What kind of response did you get from your testimony? I mean, I'm hoping that they've got the idea that we need to reshore some of our manufacturing. We need to do some smart things. What kind of response did you get?
Well, look, to be honest, the Democrats in the committee, they all had different issues they wanted to focus on, whether it be focusing on the rail side of things or manufacturing, or how do we provide more flexibility for our ports to deal with this immediate surge of containers. And all of them were really positive. I thought all of them were responding to the types of issues that we were raising, that the labor community has been raising. The Republican side really just seemed focused on blaming the Obama administration for not solving the problem that corporate America created, or blaming vaccine mandates for this year. Again, vaccine mandates that have not gone into effect yet. Like things like that they're trying to pin all of this on the Obama administration. And they're trying to blame things like the Jones Act or that they're lower the age of truckers and lower hours of service requirements and things like that. All of those things, again, that they don't fix the structural issues. They go after and frankly, they are going to make it worse long term if we start lowering the quality of workplace or the workplace environment for all these different industries.
No, I'm right there with you, but not the Obama administration, the Biden administration. I know
Yes.
I know they want to blame Obama for everything, but not quite this.
Yes.
But look, if they could, most certainly they would. But you brought up the issue of 18-year-old truck drivers, which when I first saw that, I'm going, are you kidding me? You're going to put me at 18 years old behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler? That would be a bad idea for a whole bunch of reasons, especially because, look, there are truck drivers in this country who are holding CDLs who have left the industry because the conditions are bad, because the wages are poor, because, they want to spend time at home with their families. They don't want to work 70, 80 hours a week. They don't want to be gone weeks and months at a time. There's a way the industry could make this better.
Yeah, and if you look at the trucking industry, I mean, they have a 90% turnover rate right now. 90%. That doesn't mean that, there aren't enough people. There are people entering the workforce and leaving right away because of the conditions there. And when you say work 70 or 80 hours a week, a lot of times they're only getting paid for 30 or 40 hours of that, because a lot of this problem at the port is they're standing there waiting and not getting paid for it. They're paying for their own overhead on their trucks because they're misclassified as independent operators. They're not getting benefits. They in some cases they're leasing their vehicles from a company and have to pay them at the end of the week, which is it's insane. And that's so if you allow younger people to get in there, okay, you may have an initial surge of a handful of people who are going to be willing to do it, but you're not going to address those underlying problems, and you're not going to change the issues that are causing that level of turnover. No,
and the thing is if you're bringing 18-year-old kids in, and they are kids, they're going to be much more exploitable. And able to be cheated, some of the stories that I could tell you of some organizing work I've done over the years about people who thought they won the lottery by getting in one of these lease agreements where the company in 7 years is going to give them the truck if they just work for half of the wage of everybody else. And when they realize the truck's going to have over 1 million miles on it and need tens of thousands of dollars worth of reworks, then they go, oh gee, I think I got screwed. Because these companies are not going to do something that's going to benefit you. It's all about benefiting them, shifting risk from themselves onto you. That's it. That's all it's ever been, and that's how this misclassification stuff takes hold.
It really does. And in the rail side, I mean, Teamsters have rail members. We have a number of rail unions. These are jobs historically that are there. When you get one of these jobs, you're going to stay there. You're going to retire there. There are benefits involved. They're good paying. There's good retirement benefits, disability benefits. All these things have been created through, frankly, responsible legislating going back years and years. And what we've seen now are tons of people leaving the industry voluntarily. Those that haven't been furloughed by the Class 1 freight railroads, they're leaving the industry voluntarily and surrendering that retirement because of the corner cutting that's being done by the railroads. So they're saying you need to do car inspections in less than 60 seconds when they should be closer to 4 minutes. All of these safety measures, people are saying, look, it's just not safe. I'm not going to work in an industry like this anymore. Yeah. And that should be frightening for our country, that we're not able to have and retain those types of workers that generally we're gold standard when it comes to middle-class jobs.
Yeah, but Greg, I got to get my GI Joe. I got to get that cheap stuff from Walmart. It's got to happen quicker, Greg. I need it. Right. I need my fix of cheap stuff, Greg.
Yeah, it's again, it is a lot of short-sighted policies that have led us to this moment, and now we're seeing what the consequences are in many ways.
No, I mean,
I will say this. There are steps the Obama, even though really there's only limited things that the federal government can do here, because these are all privately owned and operated systems, whether it be from the ports or the shipping companies or the railroads or the trucking companies. There's only so much the federal government can do. But what they have done, and John Porcari has been the sort of the supply chain czar, what they have done is making a difference right now to try to ease the congestion at this moment. And I think they're not getting enough credit for that, whether it be allowing ports to have flexibility with grant money that's already been awarded, whether it's being, holding some of the companies to account to make sure that they're providing operations around the clock so that you can actually, help ease up that container backlog. So, they're using every tool they can to try to address this, but this is going to require, long-term, a hard look in the mirror, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Greg Regan. Greg's the president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Their website, ttd.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can check that out. You brought up something that I don't think we hear much about, that the entire system is privately run. These are private for-profit corporations. How come we don't hear about how inefficient they are, how wasteful they are, how bad this system has been in this moment? How come we don't hear that message like we would hear if this were something that our government was doing?
I think it's simple. I mean, one thing is I don't think people realize everything that goes into making sure that the goods they want in their stores, whether it be food and drugs or medical supplies or toys, everything that goes into getting them to that store, or how you can order something from China and have it at your doorstep in 4 days from Amazon, whatever. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that goes into getting that done, and people only really pay attention to that when it's not getting done anymore, when there's a problem. And I think that there's a lot of credit given to the corporate genius that created the system that can actually do that in 4 days, without paying attention to sort of the costs that are associated with that. And, frankly, what we've done over the years in terms of reducing the authority of our government agencies, be it the FRA, the FMC, the Surface Transportation Board, limiting their ability to do proper oversight and hold these companies accountable, means that they've been able to do what they want for decades now. And that's partly what the legislative response needs to be here, is to make sure that our oversight boards and commissions and agencies actually have the ability to do oversight. And that's one of the things we're pushing for right now.
No, I mean, for years I've been saying this, and part of the reason that I've gotten out of driving is because it's become less safe. Everybody's racing, to get to the next spot. Because everyone's on a time schedule, and there's just so much going on right now. It's frightening me. And I look at the trains, for instance. They've been trying for at least the last 8-9 years to have a train, one of those big giant trains run by one guy. And I'm going, I don't know, is two that expensive? Is too many people to have on a massive train, hundreds of tons, thousands of tons of metal going down the tracks? Is too many?
Yeah, and at the same time that they're trying to reduce it to one, they're also extending the length of the trains. We've got trains now that are 5 miles long. I mean, 5 miles long, and you want one guy that are going through, every community in our country pretty much, and going through, whether it be vast empty spaces or through dense urban areas. And one person's responsible for that. That would be, we're hopeful we can get something done to mandate 2-person crew. It is the norm right now, and frankly, 2 seems like it's pretty skeletal when you're talking about operations, but we need to make sure that is locked in, because we saw what happened with Lock McGantic and other places when train operations aren't done right. Yeah. There are real consequences for that.
That's crazy. Now, I did want to ask you about, you were asked by Senator Blumenthal about, the nominees being held up by Republicans over at the Department of Transportation and how this is playing into it. And look, Republicans have been doing their foolhardy best to make sure that the Biden administration doesn't get their people into place. And we're going into a year into this administration soon, and he still doesn't have people in key places because of Republican obstruction. How much is this playing into it, or is it purely the pandemic and all of the backlog?
Oh, no, look, the fact that we don't have people in place, the FRA administrator, which is, again, a really big part of all this, has not been confirmed yet. And, how is somebody expected to do their job in full when you have that hanging over your head a confirmation hanging over your head. And what was really baffling to me is, at the same time that, Rick Scott from Florida was criticizing the fact that they haven't had an oversight hearing on the supply chain issue, even though we were in the middle of an oversight hearing. But he was disappointed that Buttigieg and Raimondo, the Secretary of Commerce, weren't there. And he said, well, until they come, I'm going to hold up every DOT nominee because the government isn't doing enough. And it's like, do you not see how contradictory that is? That you're going to hold up all of the people who should be helping to address this because they're not addressing it? In what world does that make logical sense there?
In their world.
Right.
No, I mean, but understand, and this is where I come back to, and the reason I brought up earlier about why is no one bringing up the fact that our privately run system is not working. Someone like Rick Scott, a lot of my Republican friends don't believe government should do anything. So they do everything they can possibly do to make sure that when government does try to do something, that it's handcuffed and unable to. So this isn't surprising to me that Rick Scott, sitting in a hearing about supply chain, is wondering why we're not having a hearing on supply chain.
Yeah, and again, you're right. To your point, that the government, that old Republican adage that says that I'm here from the government, I'm here to help, and I'm here to help, or something like that. Whatever that joke is, that they've created a system where the government is unable to be the one that can really help when they are needed. And frankly, my personal view as someone who believes in government is that that's why I've supported Democrats. I believe that government is here to actually improve the lives of the people that it serves. And when given the proper tools and authority, can do that really effectively.
No, I want to vote for people who believe that they can make a difference. I don't want. No. I've always wondered why you would vote for someone who goes, look, put me in a position where nothing can work, and I'll make sure that nothing works so that I can prove that I'm right that nothing works. Please vote for me. I've never understood that. It's crazy to me. So 15 seconds. What do we do now? What should we be doing? What should the listeners be doing? What should people be doing?
We need to continue to put the focus on the industries that are responsible for this. We can't let this moment pass without real accountability from the trucking and the railroad industry. I know a lot of the focus is on the ports right now. The ports, they're moving the containers onto their ports. It's just they're getting backlogged in terms of trying to move them into the country. And so I hope that people, the government regulators, that everybody is starting to look at these business models and think, how did they fail us in this moment, and what needs to change to make it better in the future?
There you go. Greg, I appreciate the time. Great stuff, my friend.
All right. Thank you. Talk to you next time.
Good stuff. Greg Regan, president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1855. That was the day that Haymarket martyr August Spies was born. He immigrated to America from Germany in 1872 and became involved in the Chicago labor movement while working as an upholsterer. The Panic of 1873 and the Great Strikes of 1877 radicalized Spies. He soon joined the Socialist Labor Party, but left over the issue of electoral politics. He and others favored revolutionary action instead, and threw their weight to the emerging anarcho-syndicalist movement. Spies and his comrade, Albert Parson, believed trade unions must work towards ending capitalism rather than simply fighting for economic gains. They soon became leaders of the International Working People's Association in Chicago. Spies became the editor of the radical German-language newspaper, Arbeiter Zeitung. The workers' newspaper decried the incredible wealth of a few amidst the immense poverty and suffering workers faced. It became a rallying point for the 8-hour day campaign. Spies and other anarchist leaders, who would soon be known as the Haymarket Martyrs, became involved in organizing the May Day strike in 1886. Spies gave the impassioned speech at the McCormick Reaper Works. He witnessed the Chicago police shoot down 2 workers as they confronted scabs at the gate and organized a protest rally in response. The rally took place at the Haymarket Square the next evening. When the fateful bomb was thrown, Spies and his comrades were immediately arrested. They were tried and convicted for their political views. There was no evidence linking any of them to any crime. As he walked to the gallows, Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you are throttling today."
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the January 6th committee has some new subpoenas out. Max Miller, the most interesting one. He's running for Congress in Ohio. Gonzalez, the Republican, who's decided a young guy who was going to be a star, had a conscience, though. That's not something the Republicans want in their elected leaders. He's moving on to something else. And this Max Miller, he's running there as well. But he's being subpoenaed because, after all, he was part of all of this stuff. In fact, as the story goes, he was one of the people who helped arrange some of the stuff that went on January 6th. So this Bobby Petty, Ed Martin, Brian Jack, Brian Lewis, and Kimberly Fletcher Story, they have been subpoenaed. And we'll see if they decide to go in and plead the fifth, or if they're going to go the expensive route and fight it. I'm telling you, I'm hoping they all go in and plead the fifth, and just so we can watch it happen. Also, Jenna Ellis, she tweeted out today that she was upset with Politico for putting out her memo. And she said, did they not know that this was privileged? And I got to tell you, I don't think that you're figuring out how to usurp our elections entitles you to privilege. Sorry, just don't. I do think it's cute, though. I do think it's cute. Because understand, nobody didn't certify their elections. All of the electors were certified. And here to share some thoughts on, the subpoenas, the memos, and all of the craziness of the day, I've asked Jack Cocchiarella to come talk with us. Jack is the digital director for Marcus for Georgia. He's also the co-host of the Zoomed In podcast. Jack, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me on, Rick. It's always a pleasure. Glad to be back.
What do you think? These 6 more people subpoenaed, 6 more potential stories, 6 more people potentially to go, hey, I plead the fifth. Thoughts?
Well, it just shows that, justice is slow, but eventually these things will happen. Justice is especially slow when these things are practically unprecedented. But what is good in this slow moving arc of justice is that you expect a lot of this information that the committee is gathering. It's been hundreds of interviews, thousands of documents being poured over. I expect from the people that I've talked to that these documents, these interviews, these little quotes about what happened on January 6th will all be coming out on the latter half of 2022. Now that's a little disappointing in some ways because it's taking so much time, but it's also important to know that January 6th will be in the minds of the American people right before we are deciding how our elections are going to be ran in 2024, because that's what this is. Right. 2024 is like, that's like, this is the big deal. Trump is running again. We can expect that. But in 2022, that's our vaccine, right? So if we fight hard and we are able to make sure that Democrats have some semblance of control over how our elections are run, 2024 is going to be a legitimate election.
Yeah, I don't want anyone having control over our elections. I just want them to be fair. And yet what I'm seeing happening in Republican states across this country is they're erecting massive barriers, and they're also simultaneously plotting on how to, when they do lose, overturning those elections like they plotted to do here. And look, there are a bunch of memos out there, and who writes their treason on PowerPoint? And then has a part of it that you go, here it is for us to all share and see. It's amazing to me. But what's the thing is, all of the things that I've been saying since 2015 and people going, oh, you're just being hyperbolic. This stuff's actually turning out to be 100% true.
No, it's real. And, I'm a college student. I know what a bad college presentation looks like. And a PowerPoint outlining your coup is a fucking bad college presentation. And we are so lucky. Rick Wilson has said this a million times. We have been lucky that the evil in the Republican Party has been incompetent. During the Trump administration, the evil in the Republican Party was incompetent. They couldn't get things done. And that's the real worry going forward, is that when you have smart evil, and I hate to call any of these people smart, but like a Ron DeSantis or a Ted Cruz, who are legitimately smart guys. They're not buffoons. They may appear to be, but they can execute if they try to seize power. And we cannot allow that to happen. We can't count on our evil to be idiots going forward. We are fortunate that they were, but we got to take action to make sure that there is no evil in power.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if Trump were more functional, if he weren't more of a lightning rod and more chaotic, as chaotic as he was, bad things really could have happened. And that's where, fortunately it was Trump. If it were someone, like you said, like DeSantis, or even this Josh Hawley or some of these other people, it could be a scary thing. And look, I said on Inauguration Day 2017 that, Trump's going to be as horrible as we think he's going to be, but he's not the real danger. The real danger is what comes after him when we normalize the craziness that Trump is and the kind of policy that he pushes forth.
Absolutely. And the most telling thing of this Trump era has been that the story coming out, well, I'll talk about two stories specifically. The first one, that's Trump willingly and knowingly spreading COVID to Gold Star families, not caring at all, willingly doing it, knowingly doing it, because he doesn't care about other people. So when that story came out about a week and a half ago, I was surprised that it was a story because I thought we assumed that Trump knew, right? I thought we assumed, because you can basically always bet that he's going to do the wrong thing. Right. So that story, as I always say with Donald Trump, I wasn't surprised, but I was disgusted. And then the next story is the quick story that was this Mark Meadows, PowerPoint. In 24 hours, this was in and out of the media ecosystem. We had finished talking about it. I'm pretty sure we barely started talking about it.
No, we didn't.
You're right. This behavior has been normalized. A coup attempt happened. It was a coup attempt. Because it wasn't successful doesn't mean it's not news, right? They tried. They wrote shit down. Now, of course, they weren't good at it, but Mike Lindell was walking in and out of the West Wing every morning with his spreadsheets and his little note cards saying how we're going to overthrow this election. Luckily, they did not succeed, but it was real, and we need to start acting like it was real.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But here's the thing, and you look at the stuff that's going on, and in Jenna Ellis's memo, that she was outraged that Politico would put forth, because at the top it said, attorney-client privilege, like somehow that was like the thing that was going to make it, invisible to people who would want to hold her accountable. She tried to play on the big lie that there were 6 states that didn't certify. Every state certified their electors. There was no path to pull off what they wanted to pull off. No matter how many times they say that there were uncertified electors, there were not.
No, there weren't. And it just goes to continue to show Jenna Ellis, bad at the law, not a great lawyer. If you're looking for one, probably not the way to go. And yeah, no matter how many calls Trump made for, I need you to find me 13,000, 12,000 votes here. I need you to find me 40,000 votes there. Wasn't going to happen. We knew that from the beginning. That's not the way elections take place. PowerPoints, luckily enough, were not enough to turn the election in favor of Donald Trump illegitimately. Luckily, we had some Democratic guardrails in place that Republicans are now trying to strip away. And that needs to be the real concern going forward, of course.
Absolutely. No, it's just one of those things that that makes me worry about the next year. Now, you've said that you think that this is going to, these hearings and all this stuff is going to go into next year. Look, Trump supporters don't care. No. Anybody who's a Republican right now today, they don't care. They've got the Kool-Aid, they bought the hat, they got the T-shirt. There's no changing teams. So we're talking about a small number of people who swing elections in this country, hopefully being influenced by this. But what happens next year? And we've talked about this. When Republicans take power, when they get what they want with the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and gun fetish Barbie and Madison Cawthorn and Matt Gaetz and Louis Gohmert and Paul Crazy Gosar, and you go down the list of the insanity that's in that party right now. What does that train wreck look like?
So before we get to the worst case scenario, which is Republicans take control of the House. Now, that's not necessarily the worst case scenario, but because they could take control of the Senate as well. I think what's important to note is that in that lead up, Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all the crazies that you've listed were talking about what they would want to do if they seized power. Now, the Democrats actually just put out a great ad about this yesterday, talking about how Matt Gaetz was talking about obstruction and how we were going to do anything we could to stop Joe Biden. But one interesting thing that they've stated that they want to do is make Donald Trump Speaker of the House.
That's not new.
It's not new, but it's something that they are making more of a clear talking point right now, right? And so I think a message that we can use preventing the possibility of Republicans retaking the House, because it's not a truth, that it's not guaranteed, it's not a lock to happen as much as we've been told that it is, and we need to fight like it is. But I think we need to be able to clearly communicate to independent voters and voters everywhere that Republicans are so radical and so committed to Donald Trump that if they get power, if they take control of the House, they will make him practically their king. Because we know that independent voters usually in a midterm and most elections want the least radical of two options. And so I think that it's easy to frame Republicans in this way, and Democrats always have struggled with messaging. We can do this pretty simply in saying that Republicans are so radical that they're willing to obstruct Joe Biden at every turn, even if that means serving the American people. They're so radical that they won't support capping the price of insulin at $35 an hour, or an hour, sorry, I apologize, $35 a month. They're so radical that they'll do anything they can to try to get Donald Trump back in power, right? And I think that's a message that can be communicated. They're so radical that they're looking to help Donald Trump and they're looking to help their wealthy friends. So that's the first thing. The second thing in terms of talking about what could play out in the House is, let's say Republicans, they do win control of the House. It's a legitimate possibility. Let's say they do. When it comes to that vote to make Donald Trump Speaker, when Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are saying, let's make him Speaker, let's do it, he is our leader, are Republicans going to get on board with that? Is Kevin McCarthy going to be okay with that? Nancy Mace? Are other more of the establishment Republicans, and they're being lost, they're kind of get primaried and kicked out of the House, but are there more establishment Republicans going to be good with that? Will Mitch McConnell not talk to his friends in the House and say, you absolutely can't do this? So then who becomes Speaker? Is it McCarthy? Is it Jim Jordan? Is it Marjorie Taylor Greene? Do they have a Speaker? So what I think I'm seeing and what's going to happen, what will play out if they win a majority, is it could potentially be the worst thing to happen for the GOP. Because this infighting that you're seeing in Georgia right now, David Perdue trying to move to the right of Brian Kemp, which is practically impossible, that's what Republicans are jockeying for, is for a position on the rightest wing of the party. And it's not about ideology anymore. It's about an identity that is Donald Trump. If you do not support him fully, if you are 99% Trump, you're out.
Right.
And so that's what they're fighting
But
for.
don't you think the base is going to play a lot in this, especially the primary voters who are the most radical of the Republican Party, who are going to push those most extreme Republicans into that place, who will then go, yeah, we want Donald Trump as Speaker so that we can impeach Joe Biden for no reason and then go after Kamala Harris so we can put Donald Trump in his rightful spot. Because this is what they've said, from the beginning. This was always the plan. So there's no new here. They've been saying this for a while. It's just now, there's a possibility that crazy really could happen.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene did say, Matt Gaetz and herself and Boebert, that said we represent what the majority of Republican voters want. And the scary thing is that's true.
Yep.
But what does that other half of Republican voters feel about Donald Trump? How do they feel about Donald Trump becoming Speaker, about Marjorie Taylor Greene becoming Speaker and being the figurehead of this party? How do independent voters feel about that? So what I'm saying when I say that, the GOP might be imploding soon, or that there's infighting, it's not that there aren't conservatives in America, that people who have conservative values. It's that the leadership structure of the GOP, one that serves people only who are opportunists and fight each other for power, is a dog-eat-dog structure of I tear you down so I can get up, and I tear you down until one day Ron DeSantis and Ted Cruz say, well, we don't really need Trump anymore because I want to be the head of the party. Trump's not going to win for us anymore. I want to be the head of the party. Well, so we're done with Trump. But Trump has 50% of the base. And so now we're pulling each other apart. and there's no real party because there's no real leadership. They don't rise to the top based on who has the best supported ideology, because they don't have an ideology. They have an identity and who can grab the most power, and that will bring them down.
But what do you say to the argument that the sane rational of the Republicans that you had talked about a moment ago, what's left of the establishment of true conservatives, haven't they already left the party? I mean, we're seeing a lot more people, moving towards being independent, especially former Republicans. So that what's left now is the radical of the radical. Is that not where we are?
And, you can definitely make that case. And I think a lot of people, a lot of conservatives held their nose and voted for Joe Biden, who necessarily didn't want to. In 2016, they voted for Donald Trump thinking, okay, I'm going to get some judges out of this at least. But where the issue comes in is, are they going to do the same for Kevin McCarthy? Are they going to do the same for Marjorie Taylor Greene, for, Matt Gaetz? And then are they going to do the same for some lower level conservatives who don't speak out on behalf of Trump as much, but have pledged their allegiance? Then are they going to start to question them? Because once they do, then the dominoes fall. Then there's that power structure where there's so much fighting in this party that it can't sustain itself, both at the leadership level and in the way that they appeal to voters, because they just seem so radical, which they are. And that's our job to communicate. It is our job to say they are so radical in supporting that they're supporting their wealthy friends, that they're willing to do anything they can, and that's not American.
Yeah, I keep asking what is the policy? What is the goal of the conservative or the Republican movement right now? What policy are they going to push? And the answer is none. They have nothing other than burn the house down. And for some people in this country, that's enough. That's what they vote for. They want the chaos. They want the headaches. It's a crazy time we're in.
Yeah. And it's a vacuum that's pulling itself in. It's powerful, it's strong, it has been so before, but at some point it's got to collapse. And I see that as a possibility in 2022.
And we'll see how that plays out. But Jack, I appreciate the thoughts. Great, keep up the great work. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it too.
Great stuff. Jack Cocchiarella, he is the digital director for Marcus for George, also co-host of the Zoomed In podcast. You're going to take a look at that. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1906. That was the day that workers at the General Electric plant in Schenectady, New York, organized a sit-down strike. It is considered to be perhaps the first time the sit-down tactic was used in the United States. The workers were affiliated with the Industrial Workers of the World, or Wobblies. In a sit-down strike, the workers take possession of their workplace. They literally sit down on the job and refuse to leave. This prevents their employer from replacing them with strike-breaking scabs. This first sit-down strike was organized by the workers to protest the dismissal of 3 of their fellow workers and IWW members. The local newspaper, the Schenectady Union, reported, "The action of the strikers has crippled the works." Family members and supporters of the workers passed food through the windows to the men inside the plant. After 10 days, the IWW members decided to return to work. In the years that followed the action in Schenectady, the sit-down strike was not used much, but then it became a key tactic in the 1930s U.S. labor movement. It was successfully used by the Congress of Industrial Organizations. The most well-known use of the sit-down strike was the Flint, Michigan sit-down strike of 1936-1937. Workers occupied the plants of General Motors for more than 40 days, and in the end, won union recognition. The CIO had a song about sitting down for your rights.
Sit down to keep your feet. Sit down and rest your feet. Sit down, you gotta think. Sit down, sit down.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a question, comment, thought, something on your mind, give me a call, 1-866-416-RICK. So this is unprecedented. This is something never has a president done this before. Not even FDR. FDR is the guy who said, if I went to work in a factory, the first thing I would do is join a union. Not even FDR went this far. And look, if you're a union member right now, what you need to do is you need to get on any social media platform and read the comments left by so-called conservatives, by Republicans, by the Trump supporters, and of course the mindless trolls who are probably never going to have a real job, so a union's something that they would naturally mock. But Joe Biden put out a statement today on what's going on over at Kellogg. Now, you may remember, I talked about this yesterday. Kellogg has said they're going to permanently replace their 1,400 striking workers at 4 states across the country. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Omaha, Nebraska, Memphis, Tennessee, and Battle Creek, Michigan. They're going to replace all those with scabs coming across the line. And hey, good on the millennials and Generation Z, especially our Zers, because they completely shut down their online application process with a bunch of applications. So good luck on that, Kellogg. But Biden put out a statement today. I'm going to read the whole thing because this is, in my view, this is the reason I voted for Joe Biden. It's that simple. Joe said in the statement, collective bargaining is an essential tool to protect the rights of workers that should be free from threats and intimidation from employers. That's why I'm deeply troubled by the reports of Kellogg's plans to permanently replace striking workers from the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union during their ongoing collective bargaining negotiations. Permanently replacing striking workers is an existential attack on the union and its members' jobs and livelihoods. Joe says, I have long opposed permanent striker replacements, and I strongly support legislation that would ban that practice. Now understand, go back to, we just buried the guy who stopped this kind of legislation. Bob Dole was the guy who filibustered the strike replacement bill back during the Clinton years. So we should, in this moment, bury this with him. But I digress. He goes on to say, and such action undermines the critical role collective bargaining plays in providing workers a voice and the opportunity to improve their lives while contributing fully to their employers' success. Unions built the middle class of this country. My unyielding support for unions includes supports for collective bargaining, and I will aggressively defend both. I urge employers and unions to commit fully to the challenging tasks of working out their differences at the bargaining table in a manner that fairly advances both parties' interests. Now, as I said, if you're a union member, right now, go find that article. Go find the comments by Trump supporters, by Republicans, by, the trolls, who are basically saying, the heck with you. You should all be fired. There shouldn't be any unions. You deserve what you get. It's all of this horribly hateful anti-union stuff. And look, all these workers want, and this is the part that's quite amazing. They want equality in the workplace. And this is why the millennials and Generation Z, our Zoomers, are going, this is our fight too. Because what these people are doing, they want to close this 2-tier wage system. A 2-tier wage system that says if you're a legacy employee, you've been there a long time, you're going to make, say, $25 an hour. But if you don't get into that top tier, you're going to make 18. You're going to get less health care. You're going to get a different pension. You're going to get entirely different kinds of compensation. And you're never going to get to that top tier. Never. So we're going to take this quality family-sustaining wage job, this good job that people have dedicated not just their lives, but generations of dedicated lives to making this product, and we're going to make it worse for their children. And across the board, this is what I've heard from the people who are on strike. Look, I don't need another raise. Our health care is good. Our retirement's good. Our wages are good. We care about the people behind us. We care about the unborn. We care about the next generation who's going to have to raise a family on this job. This, to me, is historic and new. Past generations, oh, the heck with them. I want mine now. This tells me society might be turning from that Regan era greed is good, hooray for me, the one who dies with the most toys wins kind of mentality into, hey, what are we going to leave for our children? What's our legacy going to be? And good on, like I said, good on Generation Z and the millennials for coming out and using their talents of the web to submit application after application after application and just flood their system and basically shut it down. Because ultimately, this is one of those scenarios where Kellogg should get to the table and negotiate fairly. And this isn't, one person, well, this is just the workers holding them hostage. No, this is the workers taking the one thing that they have, the one thing that they control, and saying, we're going to withhold our labor until we get a fair share of the wealth that we create. What's happened in this country for far too long, and this is not new, what's happened for far too long is labor has been degraded. If you work for a living, somehow that's looked down upon. And it started when I was a kid. The idea of going into a physical manual labor job or a construction trades job or anything where you had to actually work, that was looked down upon. No, we were moving towards, the mind economy. We were moving towards a service-based economy of, we're going to wear the white shirt and the tie, and we're going to sit in the corner office, and it was going to be great. And now we're in this moment where, well, manufacturing's left. The jobs that are here that manual labor is a part of pay poverty wages. And the ones that are left that do pay good wages, everyone's pointing at and trying to destroy. And this is one of those weird things because you start looking at some of the profiles of the people who are going, oh, they should fire all of them. They're people who sadly aren't doing that great. The one guy said, I only make $12 an hour. They're making 20. They shouldn't make that. Instead of going, hey, how do I make $20 an hour? How do I make $25 an hour? How do I get the health care that you've got? How do I get a defined benefit pension? How do we make sure that when I retire, I have some security? That's what these people are fighting for. Now, interestingly enough, my friend John Logan, professor of labor out at the San Francisco State University, he's got a new piece out that I find interesting where he asks a simple question. He says, look, we're in a moment. The U.S. labor movement is in a moment. And the question is, will unions take advantage of the increased media attention and the negative headlines for companies attempting to quash workers' rights and spur a new era of labor activism? What I'm seeing from young people is yes, they're getting that their future is directly tied to a labor movement that is much more strong, that is much more muscular, that is much more activist and militant. People who are going to stand up and demand better. And this is where I go back to, when I was a kid. When you saw somebody get a union job, their lives got better. And I've been saying for a while, the hashtag of union life, union job, better life is right there. And that needs to be hammered out. We need to protect workers. This idea that we're used to being at-will employees that can be discarded at any moment is insane. And the sad reality is more than 90% of the workforce in this country is an at-will employee. They live under the constant possibility of they could come into work tomorrow and be shown the door for no reason whatsoever. But they've led us to believe that no, if you just it's a meritocracy, if you do a good job, you're gonna be okay. I point to this story in Arkansas. The Oven and Tap restaurant in Bentonville, Arkansas. Evidently, this guy had this great idea. He said, hey, I do this real estate conference. We're going to bring all of our people together in this real estate conference. We're going to go to this Oven and Tap there in Bentonville, and we're going to have a thing called a $100 dinner club. So whatever the cost of the meal is, $12, $15, $18, it's going to cost $100. Whatever it is. And it's going to be a great thing to help the waiter, the server who's working in that job. It was specifically for the person who was serving them. They called the restaurant. They confirmed their policy. They went through this whole thing. There were 2 servers that got the money. It was all this stuff. So they have this event. They have all these people from this real estate conference go to this restaurant. They raise $4,400, and they film it. And it was this emotional thing. I watched the video, and the servers, tears in their eyes, can't believe that this act of generosity and kindness. Because understand, these people taking a beating right now. Some of the stories I've heard from servers are you're lucky to get, a couple of pennies as a tip, let alone someone being this generous. So they ended up, all of these people who went to this conference, $4,400 went to the servers. Now, this is where you need a union in the worst way. The company, the restaurant management, fired these people. Fired this person because the manager was going to force her to share her portion of the tips with everybody else in the restaurant. That was not the intent. And it's stated by the guy who organized this event. That was not the intent of what they went through. And according to the person who runs the restaurant, told the news outlet, fired because she violated the policy of telling someone about the pooling tip policy. Now, she said she was devastated. She's got student loan problems that are coming up. This was going to help her. This was going to help her. And now, no job. And you go, well, that's not right. Of course it's not right, but it happens every day. And I look at this and I go, first, one, I'm the pooling tip thing, that gets on my nerves, especially when you're tipping someone because of their service and them going above and beyond. But this guy who organized this was very clear. We are doing this for the people who are serving us in that moment, nothing else. And cleared it with the management. And then they turned around and pulled this. The other part, and this woman brings it up, her student loans are due. She went to college, took out some loans. She's struggling to pay it back. It's going to crush her. And here we are in this moment where, $1.8 trillion in student loan debt is outstanding? 1.8 trillion? People are working waitress jobs and having to pay hundreds of dollars in student loans that they can't pay back. And the great thing about student loans, if you're the one who's holding the student loan, is they can never be discharged. You file bankruptcy, they're there. It's kind of like herpes. No matter where you go, you still got them. Now, there's a call for Joe Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt. We can have that discussion, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not against it. I think the better thing to do would be to buy up all the student loans, create a student loan trust corporation, buy up all those student loans, and have people pay back what they borrowed, and only what they borrowed, maybe 1% more to cover administrative costs, but a break-even kind of proposition where if you borrowed $10,000, you pay $10,000 back over time. We do what past presidents have done. I think of Roosevelt's Home Ownership Loan Corporation, where they bought up a bunch of mortgages where people were about to lose their homes and the banks were going to foreclose and kick all these people out in the streets. And you set up this private entity to buy up all these mortgages, really low interest rates, so people could stay in their homes. I think you can do the same thing with student loans. This idea that you're paying 2, 3, 4 times what you borrowed because of interest and penalties and fees and all that nonsense is ridiculous. But there are people who are pushing for the president to go forth and forgive up to $50,000. Okay, that's great. The problem then comes, for me anyway, what happens to the next group of students? What are we doing to make sure that the next generation doesn't get saddled? Because we're not changing the structure any. We're not helping to lower the cost of a college education. We're not increasing the amount of financial aid that's available. We're not doing what past generations did, and that's subsidize these universities to help them keep their costs low so that the tuition you pay isn't lifelong, life-altering kind of tuition. Now, I was looking at some of the statistics that, the number of people who are, the real estate people are saying, something like half of people are putting off buying homes, and, a large number are putting off having families because saddled with debt. Not good for our economy, but also not right. We told these people, go get an education, get some skin in the game. And they did that. And now we're going to punish them with, the one student loan sheet that I saw, the person took out $70,000 in loans, had paid like $80-some thousand back, and still owed like $160. And I'm going, how is that even possible mathematically? Well, it's possible because once you start accruing all of these penalties and the interest and all this stuff over years of it just compounding, because hey, couple sometimes got tight, you weren't able to make any payments. Well, that just compounds with the penalties and made it crazy worse. There's got to be a better system than this. There's got to be a better system. But in all of this, whether it's labor and employment, whether it's student loans, we're in this really crazy spot where it's the folks at the bottom who are taking a beating. And I wouldn't even say the bottom. I would say the 90% of us who are struggling with this. I don't know anyone. I literally know no one who says, I'm not worried about my kids not being able to go to college. Everybody I know goes, man, I don't know how we're going to pay for this. If we want an educated workforce, if we want to maintain our advantage globally, education is the key to all of it. Education is the key to moving us forward. The question is are we smart enough? Will we invest in it, or will we, again, the loud squeaky wheel? Because I have a friend who, well, I had to pay for mine. The heck with them. It's all about the me. Interesting times. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Kyle Rittenhouse thing still on some folks' minds. And when I come back, I'm going to talk to a professor from Duquesne about his piece on the Rittenhouse decision. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day the 1,000,000th Model T rolled off the Ford assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan, near Detroit. Henry Ford started Model T production 7 years earlier. For nearly 20 years, the Tin Lizzie served as the first affordable vehicle, opening up travel and leisure to a new middle class. Ford refashioned the packing house conveyor to develop the assembly line. Before production moved to the sprawling modern River Rouge complex, the Highland Park plant was considered the factory that changed the world. Ford's ambition to produce cars for the multitudes extended to his workers. As part of his campaign to beat back organizing drives by the industrial workers of the world, Ford instituted the $5 day at the Highland Park plant. For auto workers, buying a Model T even with the $5 day was not so easy. The $5 day actually amounted to $2.34 in wages and an additional $2.66 a day in profit sharing if Ford determined the worker was actually living right. Investigators from his sociological department visited workers in their homes. The routine intrusions into the personal lives of workers away from the job included determining spending and cleanliness habits, whether they drank or smoked, whether they were married or single, the state of the workers' marital relations, and family values. Workers who failed these home inspections were given 6 months to shape up or be fired. Ford ruled young single men, women, and blacks completely ineligible from the wage program. For a time, employee turnover plummeted and production increased. But wartime inflation and deteriorating working conditions all but killed the $5 day, which ended in 1921.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said from the beginning, if you remember the whole Kyle Rittenhouse trial and all of the hoopla around it, I was not surprised by the decision. In fact, I was expecting the decision. We were not going to find him guilty of that. My problem from the very beginning was here was a kid who went looking for trouble. He found the trouble he was looking for, and we've rewarded it by going, yeah, you're harmless. As I said, when I was a kid, you started a fight, you got beat up, you deserved it. Now we're in this world. You start a fight, you get beat up, you get to shoot and kill somebody and go, hey, I had no choice. I was defending myself. What a strange place we've gotten ourselves, which is why I've asked my next guest to come talk with us. Bruce Ledwitz is an author. The book, The Universe is on Our Side. He's also a professor of law at Duquesne University. He just wrote a piece, Stop Calling Kyle Rittenhouse a Hero. He killed 2 unarmed people, which, hello, that's the reality. Bruce, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thank you for having me.
So this is, honestly, the main line. He's not a hero. He put himself in a position where he ended up killing 2 people. There's nothing to celebrate here.
No, and as I know, Rittenhouse may himself feel that way. That he went into this wanting to be a hero, thinking of himself perhaps as John Wayne, as the prosecution suggested. He was going to protect people against lawless elements, but it did not turn out, I think, the way that he expected.
No, and this is where there's a whole bunch of failure here, from his mother not being part of this, to a police department not saying, no, get out of here. There were lots of failures that put this kid in this position. And a big part of it is this sentiment in society, I believe, that there's a good guy with a gun who's going to protect us, where, I'm sorry, that doesn't seem to work out as often as we'd like to believe.
Well, there are good guys with guns, and they're called the police, and that's what we need to be relying on. It's a disaster. The actual verdict is a disaster because of what it says about the law. Even if in certain instances the jury was right under the law in the Rittenhouse case, it just shows the law of self-defense has become warped.
Do you think you're the lawyer here, you're the professor of law here, I'm just a dumb truck driver. Do you think it was correctly decided?
Well, I think arguably under as I said in the column, the jury probably correctly decided that in terms of the first victim, Rosenbaum, of course we're not allowed to call them victims in this court,
right? But
victim, Rosenbaum was a person with mental problems, and he threatened to kill Rittenhouse unquestionably, and that suggests that it was reasonable for Rittenhouse to fear that if he got the gun, Rosenbaum got the gun, he might have turned it on him. But it's inherently ambiguous. This is the problem with he lunged for the gun. Lunging for the gun is not inherently lethal force and cannot be met with lethal force. It's that the law of self-defense is, what did the shooter reasonably believe? We have to get away from that. Yeah. We have to at least say to the jury, you decide what was actually the case. We're not going to let the shooter decide who lives and who dies.
Right. In my position from the beginning in all of this, and I go back to the George Zimmerman case, where when I was a kid, you started a fight with somebody, and I said this at the beginning, and they beat your behind, you deserved what you got. And everybody in society said, you started it, you deserved it. Now that's kind of flipped on its head, where I started it, yeah, but then he started to beat me up and I had to protect myself. So now this is okay. I don't know that this is the right message to society, because now you're going to get a bunch of people who want trouble just so they can put themselves in this situation.
Well, no, I'm afraid that may be true, because even if we don't think that was Kyle Rittenhouse, and I'm not sure that it was, but there will be people now who take their rifles to demonstrations of people, or there may be people who take their rifles to demonstrations of people they don't agree with, hoping that something will happen. And, you're now moving into a very dangerous circumstance. Because the other weird thing about Rittenhouse is that his third victim, Gage Krosengrutz, he confronted Rittenhouse with his own, he had a gun also. So the two of them are staring at each other. They both have guns. Apparently, the jury believes that either one of them would have been justified in shooting. If Krosengrutz, sorry, I'm not pronouncing it right, Krosengrutz had killed Rittenhouse, ironically, he wouldn't be guilty of a crime either.
Yeah, I mean, this is the world we're heading into. And I'm questioning whether this is a good place for us in society. I know some of my gun friends, my gun fetish crowd friends, that's what they believe. We should all be carrying sidearms and long guns, and we should be able to protect ourselves at the drop of the hat, where bullets will be flying all over the place. I don't know that's the society that I want to live in.
Well, right. And eventually, as I also said in the column, eventually society subject to that is going to restrict guns. And that's not what Second Amendment proponents want. Right. So I think we have to be moving, and I'm going to write a column about this next week in the Pennsylvania Capital Star. What should the law of self-defense be? And I think the law of self-defense should be the jury has to decide what is actually the case. We can't just accept the sincere belief of the guy with the gun to decide who lives and who dies.
Yeah, see, but here's the thing, and I said this, if I were on the jury with my mentality, which they would have never kept me, understand that, they'd have thrown me right to the curb. But the fact that he went there looking for trouble, he showed up in a place where there was going to be violence. He knew there was going to be violence. Everybody knew there was going to be trouble. He showed up with a gun. That tells me he was ready to escalate violence. So he was looking for trouble. When he found the trouble, I'm sorry, you started it, you deserve what comes. And for me, I don't know that I can find that in self-defense, which is why I wasn't on the jury.
Right. Well, that may be why, Rick, why you weren't on the jury. But, the most disturbing thing of all is that the acquitted Rittenhouse of reckless endangerment. And maybe the prosecution didn't handle the case well. Maybe they didn't. A lot of people think they did not. But it seems to me, I agree with you, that he was guilty of reckless endangerment if he was guilty of nothing else. Yeah. But by the way, Rick, this isn't the weirdest part of the verdict. What people don't understand is that the second victim, Anthony Huber. Now, Anthony Huber went after him with a skateboard. Went after Rittenhouse with a skateboard, thinking he was an active shooter, which of course he was until the jury acquitted him on grounds of self-defense. If the jury had gone the other way, Rittenhouse is just a murderer. But when Huber went after him to stop him and disarm him, he hit him with a skateboard. This is what you would expect someone to do to stop an active shooter. So the jury seems to be saying that even if you're a terrorist, if you're trying to get away and somebody tries to stop you violently, you can shoot them and it's not a crime. I mean, it's just plain weird.
Yeah, there's so much there.
Believe me.
And I guess this, again, it's back to, what do we do in a society where the gun fetishists have dominated our rule of law? Because you're right, that is a weird part of that decision as well.
Well, if we did have an objective standard, then a jury could say, look, you thought you were endangered by Huber, but if you had surrendered to the police, Huber did not mean you harm. He was just trying to stop an active shooter from getting away. Yeah. If you had surrendered, he would have stopped. And in that case, the jury could say that's not good self-defense.
Right. Now, the other part of this, had the police said, no, give me that gun, get the hell out of here, that would have probably been a better outcome altogether. None of this stuff happens.
Well, and that's absolutely true. For the idea that, and of course, we all saw the video, Rittenhouse, after all this, I'm not sure that this was his intention at the beginning, but he did, at least to save himself, try to surrender to the police because he was afraid of the crowd. Yeah. And they have a kid apparently saying, I shot somebody with a gun. And they said, oh, go away. You don't look like a shooter to us. What in the world? I mean, I don't know. A guy with a gun who says he shot somebody, I would take his word for it.
I think I would too as well. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Bruce Ledwitz. He's got a book, The Universe is on Our Side. He's also a professor at Duquesne University. He's got this piece out. I hope you'll take a look at. Stop calling Kyle Rittenhouse a hero. He killed 2 armed people. We'll get that out on social media. Tell me real quick about the book. I'm curious. The universe is on our side. It doesn't often seem like that.
Right. Well, the book argues that, and I do hope, Rick, that this is the first book about the breakdown in American public life in a long time that both sides can read. The book argues that we have a fundamental problem in society. Our divisions stem from something very deep. It's the working out of the death of God, a centuries-long event. We thought that, and I'm not a religious person. I'm a secularist. I'm not a part of any religion. But we thought that, the death of God would be no big deal. But it turns out that a lot of the foundation of our values, a lot of the stories of human life and its meaning, they were all bound up with this God. And we don't have that anymore. And we need a substitute. And secularists have to wake up and start building a healthy secular society. And I suggest the way to do that is a substitute story, which is the story of the universe being on our side.
Interesting. I hope folks will take a look at it. We'll get links out on how people take a look at that book, bruceledwitz.com, the website. We'll get links out there. I guess my problem is the people who are causing most of the problems are the hyper God people who don't think God is dead.
Well, there are a lot of atheists in churches, and you have to ask if people are so, if people in churches are angry. Jesus was not angry. Maybe their faith is not as great as they profess.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Christmas cards were sent out by Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey and the one from Gun Fetish Barbie out in Colorado with around the Christmas tree with the AR-15s and because Jesus would be packing heat. Come on, Bruce, you know it.
And maybe Santa will bring ammunition. And see, Jesus said, "He who lives by the sword dies by the sword." But he didn't say anything about a 6-shooter. So maybe
or a 30-shooter.
Oh yeah, right. An extended clip. I have no idea how American Christianity has been so hijacked, and it's mostly Protestants. It's really not the Catholic Church. It's really mostly a sort of a strange Protestant fixation with guns. And it is really very strange for the Prince of Peace and his followers to be packing guns.
Yeah, and the kind of the viciousness, whatever happened, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I remember, the whole, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of the poor and the downtrodden and all of that stuff. I don't remember when Jesus said, "Go forth and say hooray for me, stomp on the little children." I guess I missed that sermon.
Well, and that's what I mean when I say that religion has been affected by the death of God. When religion was really healthy, you had all of that kind of compassion and generosity. You had Dr. Martin Luther King, obviously a religious movement, fundamentally, the civil rights movement. I think we lack faith. I think even people who go to church lack faith. I think the death of God is a real event for this culture all the way down. I think you'll be shocked. Just take the fact that on the National Day of Prayer, there was a National Day of Prayer for the COVID back in March of 2020. And there were no prayers for God to spare us the virus. 50 years earlier, that's what the prayers would have been.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with that. But here, what we've got now are people saying, "Well, Jesus doesn't want me to wear a mask because I'm cloaked in the blood of Jesus," which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard someone say. But now here in our state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, our Supreme Court from high on the mount has ruled that our school children no longer have to wear the little piece of cloth that could keep others safe because somehow it's an impingement on freedom, a governmental overreach, whatever crazy idiotic response you want. This is what they've thrown out, and my religious friends are celebrating. We're free, and we're ticking off the libtards and all that. And I'm just going, how do we get through this pandemic without people dying?
Well, Rick, first of all, fortunately, none of these decisions keep parents from having their kids wear masks. So parents are still able to protect their children. I'm not happy about the decision, but I have to tell you, 11 judges looked at what Governor Wolf's administration did, and 10 of them, half of them Democrats, said that it was not in accordance with law. I think maybe in this instance, the judges were ruling on the law and not on anything else. And I'm not sure the Wolf administration followed the right procedures.
This is where
the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled in his favor on a lot of occasions.
Sure. And I might not disagree with you, but if we had a functional government where you had one party not wanting to burn the house down, maybe we could have gone a route to say, no, we need legislation to help make sure that we get this done right. I'm not going to beat up on Tom Wolf for making the one decision and saying, look, I'll take a beating in the courts if I have to make sure that people are safe. I give him credit for it.
No, Rick, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's what he did. I mean, I don't think, if you listen, I didn't listen to the arguments, but I read excerpts of the oral arguments. They didn't have a very good case. I think Governor Wolf did exactly what you just said. I think he said to his people, we're going to do this. It's going to protect people. Whether we lose in court or not later, I don't care. And, I think you may be absolutely right that was his thinking. Yeah. But on the law, I don't blame the courts.
No, I'm not either. I'm just saying we're in this weird spot where people are celebrating something that's going to make people less safe. And I'm struggling with this in a mighty way because, as we were talking about a minute ago, that idea that we're going to be caring about others, that common decency seems to be dead, is a real struggle for me.
It is. And I don't understand it either, how masks became politicized. But I don't understand how the vaccine became politicized because, after all, it's Trump's vaccine. He was the reason it was rolled out so fast. He did a great job. And if he had taken credit for it, he'd be president today.
But he's taking credit for it. He wants to be the godfather of the vaccine while not taking credit for it. It's kind of a screwy place that we're in. But I hope folks will take a look at your book. The universe is on our side, and I sure hope you're right. I hope someone is on our side. But Bruce, it was great talking with you. I hope you'll come back again and talk to us again soon.
Anytime at all, Rick. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Good stuff. Bruce Ledwitz. Make sure you check out his website, bruceledwitz.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. And, of course, the book, The Universe is on Our Side. Take a look at that and maybe share some thoughts back with us. Going to take a quick break right here. Back after this with your calls, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show for working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1855. That was the day that Haymarket martyr August Spies was born. He immigrated to America from Germany in 1872 and became involved in the Chicago labor movement while working as an upholsterer. The Panic of 1873 and the Great Strikes of 1877 radicalized Spies. He soon joined the Socialist Labor Party, but left over the issue of electoral politics. He and others favored revolutionary action instead, and threw their weight to the emerging anarcho-syndicalist movement. Spies and his comrade, Albert Parson, believed trade unions must work towards ending capitalism rather than simply fighting for economic gains. They soon became leaders of the International Working People's Association in Chicago. Spies became the editor of the radical German-language newspaper, Arbeiter Zeitung. The workers' newspaper decried the incredible wealth of a few amidst the immense poverty and suffering workers faced. It became a rallying point for the 8-hour day campaign. Spies and other anarchist leaders, who would soon be known as the Haymarket Martyrs, became involved in organizing the May Day strike in 1886. Spies gave the impassioned speech at the McCormick Reaper Works. He witnessed the Chicago police shoot down 2 workers as they confronted scabs at the gate and organized a protest rally in response. The rally took place at the Haymarket Square the next evening. When the fateful bomb was thrown, Spies and his comrades were immediately arrested. They were tried and convicted for their political views. There was no evidence linking any of them to any crime. As he walked to the gallows, Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you are throttling today."
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind. Again, more social media ridiculousness. This group, townhall.com, they took part of Joe Biden's speech and cut off the ending. And this kind of selective framing is something the right is very good at. Joe Biden made these remarks saying, we're going to keep at it to ensure that the American people are paying their fair share for gas, not being gouged for gas. He said, look, nationally, prices are down 7% a gallon, continuing to fall. We're making progress. We're going through all this. And that's where he goes into the line. We're going to keep ensuring that the American people are paying their fair share for gas, not being gouged. Now, what's townhall.com do? This right-wing hack site? You know what they did. They cut off the ending. And this is where speechwriters got to know this stuff a little bit better. They should have never put that point at the end. They shouldn't have used the fair share part of it. That shouldn't have been written. But, of course, in the most lying, deceitful way, they said, he's out there fighting for you to pay more for gas. In fact, immediately I got an email from someone saying, see, Joe Biden's fighting for the oil companies. You got suckered. Going, did you bother to look into any of this yourself? Because here's the thing. I believe nothing I see on social media. Nothing. I read it, I look at it, I go, okay. And if I want to know more about it, if it's something that piques my interest, I then go investigate further. And I look for a source that I trust. Townhall.com, the right-wing hack site, is not ever a site I take on face value. Never. But this, again, is another one of these moments where the right wing has spent lots of money, creating these kind of sites that people buy into, because they even got a congressman to retweet this. This Jim Hagdorn, Minnesota Republican. He tweeted out, according to Biden, Americans are paying their fair share for gas. Let's be clear, Mr. President, this energy crisis was created by you and your anti-energy policies. As he retweets this doctored clip. Even a sitting member of Congress. Now you go, but Rick, do you really believe he was duped? No, because honesty and truthfulness and accuracy has no business near the Republican Party. And you go, probably in politics as a whole at all. Which is why I look at this guy and I'm going, you've now got no respectability whatsoever. And you go through the comments, and again, I read through the comments of now understand, most of the comments are bots. Most of the comments are troll farms. Most of the comments that you read are going to be people who, they just want to amplify their whatever they're being paid to pitch, which is why I don't usually fall down the comment rabbit hole. But in this vein, I'm looking at this stuff and I'm going, you've literally got people in Congress doing this. You've literally got people who are supposedly our representatives, who are supposed to be in the halls of power fighting for a better future. Where's the Republican plan to lower gas prices? If that's truly the goal, where's the legislation? There isn't any. Because here's what we found out, and this is the amazing part of all this. This is the part that just blows my mind. The oil companies, their profits, wow, through the roof. They are making enormous profits. Massive. And why are they making massive profits? According to them, it's because the cost of oil is up. So hold on. So your production costs are going up, which would cost you more money theoretically. But somehow your profits exceeded even those costs and even went beyond, well beyond, like 60% beyond last year's numbers. Gee, I wonder why that could be. Could it be, I don't know, that you're gouging the American consumer because, hey, good old-fashioned American opportunism? And the answer is yes. They're robbing us blind. This is capitalism at its finest, my friends. This is what the capitalist class does. They know they got you by the short hairs. They got you. Because you got to get to work. Got to get the kids to school. Got to go get groceries. You got to do all that stuff. And the only way you're going to get there, because we didn't invest in any public transit, is you're going to pay through the nose for gas. And they know it. And this is where I'm glad Biden has asked the Trade Commission folks to go, hey, maybe we should look into this. Maybe we should look into the gouging, just kind of a thought. Just a thought. Maybe we should, maybe we should look into it. And I think what we'll find on the other side is they're gouging us to death. And this is where, again, we need much stricter oversight. We need people who are going to stand up and say, absolutely no more, and hold these people accountable. And the other part of it is I can't wait till we get off the dirty oil anyway, and get into something, more public transit, some electric vehicles, some other things. Get off the dirty oil that's holding us hostage. Just crazy to me. But again, I go back to this doctrine. This happens all the time. This kind of misinformation is something that, especially on the right, they're susceptible to. You look at their Facebook groups, and I'm in a couple of them as ghosts just to see what kind of craziness is going on. And, like the whole, let's go, Brandon. Okay, they've got themselves a little chant. Oh, how cute. You can regurgitate a three-word line. Good for you. Oh, you're so cute, pumpkin. It's well, I guess it shows that maybe our education system does need some work after all. Now, Biden did talk about the fact that they released a record 50 million barrels of oil, which I would have hoped would have dropped a little bit more. And we'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks. But we'll find out. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice from Pennsylvania on line 1. Alice, how are you today?
I'm good, Rick. How are you?
I am fabulous. What's on your mind?
Well, the thing is, with the gas prices, if you haven't noticed, I've noticed over the years, it starts out, just before graduation from high school and college, they up the prices because, of course,
Sure.
They have to, buy a new car for the child that's graduating from high school or college. And, of course, they have to send them on their little vacation. And then they do it in the fall because tuition again. And then around this time of year, Christmas time, the wife needs a new fur coat.
Exactly. And one the other thing that I've often noticed is it's amazing how the prices go up whenever there's a Democrat in office. It's just kind of amazing because, honestly, the president doesn't really have a lot of sway over what the prices are. It's not like he's sitting in the meetings. Now, he can do what Biden did and release them from the reserves, but that's only short term. These opportunists, they know what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Line their pockets some more. And I just shake my head because it seems that the American citizenry as a whole are rather ignorant at how some of this stuff works. And I was speaking with a Republican friend earlier today and had to bite my lips several times. She was complaining about the gas prices, and of course she just had it all wrong. But I just thought, I'm tired of talking to you, and that's kind of where I'm at with the rest of these people. I'm like,
You're a 5. Got to go.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. You know, I had someone bring up well, Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. I go, but that wasn't going to help us anyway. That simply was taking dirty tar sands oil from Canada, going right through the middle of our country and out through the bottom of Texas to the international community. It wasn't helping us. Now, if you said, hey, we're going to build it to Chicago, we're going to refine it in Chicago, and it's going to stay here in the U.S., maybe you got a different argument. But that's not what was.
Oh, I know. But, they don't understand these things, and I just keep shaking my head going, oh, my God, you'd have to write 3 different sets of encyclopedias to get you up to snuff on everything.
Yeah, that's if they didn't burn them, because I guess book burning's coming back soon.
Oh, I know. I'm sure that they'll have fun doing that. That seems to be the thing, But they should remember one thing. Any time that there's a pandemic, and history has shown this, and of course they're all ignorant of history, that people rebel once everything comes out of it. And, things happen like the French Revolution and whatnot. So they might want to keep these things in mind.
Yeah, I think some of my friends on the right, they're hoping and praying. That's why they've been building arsenals. Because I've got some friends who they've been preparing for the next Civil War.
Oh, I know. But that's okay. I have a number of, let's see, how do I put this delicately? I know some herbal ways to get rid of folks.
There you go.
So,
I don't want to go any further than that. Alice, thank you so much.
No, I'm just saying, if there was a Civil War,
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much. Fantastic. I appreciate it. Not going any further there. But no, look, I've said this before. I actually, know someone who tells me that they've got guns and rice buried and radio equipment all over the area. He goes, you'd be surprised where I got guns and rice. That scares me. And it should scare the rest of us. We're in definitely freaky times. Also, the other decision today, the other story that popped out, I found scary and troubling. President Biden was talking about SB 8, and he said the ruling in the Supreme Court that's going to allow the Texas bill to stand. The ruling reinforces that there's so much work to be done in Texas and Mississippi and in many states around the country where women's rights are currently under attack. He says he will continue to work with Congress to pass the Women's Health Protection Act. And this is one of those issues that come next year, if the Supreme Court does what we think it's going to do, and they've allowed the Texas law to stand to this point, big trouble ahead. And look, this, as some of my Democratic strategist friends who are kind of, go, okay, fine, this would be good for us because we're going to get more people engaged. How many people are going to suffer from this? Now, I asked the question, will the real Dr. Oz please stand up? Please stand up. Evidently, Mahatma, I can't say his Mahatma Oz, Dr. Oz. We're just going to go with Dr. Oz. He is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. He's campaigning now on the fact that he wants to outlaw all abortions, wants the full overturning of Roe versus Wade. Now, this is a guy who in the past has said that the idea of a highly restrictive law outlawing abortions is dangerous, unfair to women, and premised on misleading information. So not sure which Dr. Oz we're going to get. You would think that the good doctor would have learned smart enough stuff on the vaccine and the virus and all that to give good advice. Not so much. And yet from people I know who are faithful viewers of his TV program, lots of weird kind of misinformation that going to be an interesting fun time to over the next year to wade through. And finally, the thing that we're going to hear a lot about, and get ready for it because the scare tactics are coming. Get ready for it. The right-wing attack machine is salivating. The right-wing spin machine and fear machine. The outrage candy folks are in full production. Evidently, lawmakers in New York City voted to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. Evidently, this law that they passed, and overwhelmingly in New York City, will give about 800,000 legally documented permanent residents, people who live in New York City, work in New York City, pay taxes in New York City. This is where they live. They're not citizens yet, but they're going to be able to vote in municipal elections. And the people that oversee what happens in their community. These aren't federal elections. It's not even state elections. It is just the most local of elections. You know this is going to be spun. The bumper sticker is going to be Democrats want illegals to vote. You know this is coming. They always go to the most extreme position possible. And again, truth and accuracy don't matter. It's going to be spun in a way that Democrats only want the illegals to vote because that's the only way they can win. Yet, you look at my mother always said, if someone's pointing their finger at you, they've got three pointing back at you. The Republicans have been gerrymandering and blocking people from voting to increase their advantage for decades. I go back to the Paul Weyrich quote back in 1980, talking to religious people, 20,000 Baptist ministers in Dallas. And he says, who believes in good government and we want everyone to vote? He goes, I don't want everybody to vote. Our leverage goes up as the voting populace goes down, which means the more of us they can keep from voting, the better it is for them. And them at that time being the crazy evangelicals. The ones who are, supposedly the religious folk who are well armed and praying for the next Armageddon and the end times. Always love the end timers. And again, every time I think of that, why wait? Please save us all the trouble. But this is going to be an issue in the next election. I feel it. I feel it in my bones that this is something that conservatives are not going to, that the crazy right is not going to allow to go by. Now, do I have problems with having people vote in their local elections on things that happen to them locally? No, I don't. If you're a permanent resident, that you're legally here, I don't have a problem with it. Because understand, for our constitutional folks, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to be a voter. That you have to be a citizen. It's not there. We created that years later. Because this is a country of immigrants. If you're here legally and documented, this is where the right should be going, no, this is okay. How do we get those documented folks who are permanent residents to become citizens? Now, I can see an argument being had there, but this is going to be an interesting to see how they spin it. But just so you know, when the first time you hear them say, Democrats want illegals to vote, they're full of it. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe, like, share, comment, all that stuff. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
'Tis the season, right? Traditionally, this time of year celebrates spirituality and festivities, including Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa. In modern-day America, however, the winter solstice signals the faithful to gather from afar in monumental temples to worship our nation's supreme secular deity. Big-time sports. Get ready for a nonstop frenzy of football, basketball, soccer, and more, with devout fans making travel pilgrimages to their sacred stadiums and arenas. But whatever the sport, the name of the game these days is the same, MONEY. For the people's sports franchises are firmly in the grip of a self-regulating handful of secretive, uber-rich, autocratic corporate owners. We might worship the team that actually plays the sport, but our money mostly goes to this ruling clique of billionaire barons. Consider those gargantuan houses of worship where the games are played. We the people, including non-worshippers, paid for nearly all of them with our tax dollars, usually with no chance to vote on the giveaway. Yet, a few dozen profiteering team owners are given control of the venues. They set and collect the outrageous ticket prices and are even allowed to gouge the faithful by charging $15 for one small beer. Most insulting, these rich public welfare moochers pocket millions of extra dollars a year by turning these huge edifices, even those built with the people's money, into private billboards by selling off the so-called naming rights to the highest corporate bidders. Thus, dozens of our major sports facilities don't honor the cities they're in, the citizenry, or even the team. Instead, they're gaudily plastered with brand names like FedEx Field, Minute Maid Park, RCA Dome, and Toyota Center, as though they're corporate-owned. This is Jim Hightower saying the money game is yet another corporate swindle, using America's sporting spirit for